Alright, so for my media theories video, I chose to apply the media theories to Supernatural. So in this presentation, we're going to be covering a brief summary of the show, and I'm going to talk about how it applies to Chomsky's propaganda theory, audience theory, so the hypodermic needle theory, two-step flow theory, uses and gratifications, and reception theory, as well as postmodernism. And then we're going to have a discussion question at the end. So Supernatural follows the lives of two brothers, Sam and Dean Winchester. With the help of other hunters, Sam and Dean hunt different monsters, whether it be werewolves, demons, ghosts, or any other supernatural creature that you can imagine. Together, the brothers travel across the United States, fighting and killing these monsters. So first, we're going to take a look at Chomsky's propaganda theory and how it can be applied to Supernatural. So Supernatural is produced by Time Warner, which is a part of Hollywood, which is often ridiculed for its far left opinions. And this in part could cause Supernatural's non-religious liberal attitude. Sam is quite religious and believes in God and is constantly ridiculed by Dean for his religion. Dean is not remotely born again. He doesn't believe in God or angels. Dean has a very negative view of God. And even after he realized the existence of angels, he still doesn't worship. If anything, he is infuriated by the lack of action from heaven while all of these atrocities happen on the earth below. Some episodes of Supernatural could be considered to be very anti-religion. Even the angels, who we traditionally view as perfect and kind, are portrayed in a negative light because they have a tendency to kill people without any thought or sympathy. This portrayal of God and his helpers gives Supernatural a very non-religious feel. Supernatural is also a quite liberal show, and while so far there have not been any openly homosexual characters, there's a great deal of suggested homoeroticism between two of the characters. So next we're going to try to apply audience theory to Supernatural. So first is the hypodermic needle theory. This is one of the earliest looks at media and how it affects the audience. This theory suggests that the audience is completely passive and they just intake the information that they are presented with and are influenced by it. Now, in 2018, it is realistic to think that not every person will react and interpret the media in the same way. If we apply this theory to Supernatural, we could assume that every person watching will be influenced by it. So if we apply it through the lens of the hypodermic needle theory, we could say that Supernatural could lead to more violence and anger and in youth. Since Supernatural has a great deal of violence and illegal activity, the hypodermic needle theory would assume that each audience member will react in the same way, and so every person who watches Supernatural should react by being more violent and maybe having a bad attitude towards law. This is obviously not the case, so we can see that this theory isn't relevant anymore, or ever was. Next is the two-step flow theory. Now, the two-step flow theory is like one step up from the hypodermic needle theory. So the two-step flow theory relies on opinion leaders to spread the message of the media and interpret it in their own ways. We sometimes rely on celebrities to interpret the media and base our reaction off of theirs. As time goes on, however, the opinion leaders we look up to are often people like friends and family. In many cases, we base our reactions and opinions of a show, and we decide whether or not we will watch it based on the people that we are close to and how they feel about it. They become our opinion leaders, and we rely on them for guidance on how to react. For example, with Supernatural, if my friends had a positive reaction to Supernatural, I would be much more likely to watch it than if they had had a negative reaction to it. Next is the uses and gratifications theory. So there are 5 uses and gratifications that people have for consuming the media and watching television, which can be applied to Supernatural. First is information and education. And while you obviously don't watch Supernatural for the sake of educating yourself, it could be it could be used to learn more about religious lore and some of the traditions of other cultures. Next is entertainment. Now, obviously, Supernatural is a drama series and it is made to entertain. It has many action scenes as well as comedy and emotion to try to please many people in the audience. Altogether, Supernatural entertainment is definitely one of the main gratifications of Supernatural. Next is personal identity. Now, another reason that people may watch television and Supernatural is because they identify with one of the characters. Many people who watch many people watch Supernatural because they feel like they share some character traits with some of the characters. Next is integration and social interaction. Now, this is another large part of watching Supernatural. Many fans have created Supernatural has a huge internet following. So, to many, becoming part of the Supernatural fandom is a good way to start relationships and build friendships by watching the same television show. It can go miles in making a person feel included and less like they're alone, and having similar interests to someone else can help you feel better about yourself and help someone else feel normal, feel like they fit in more. Finally, people watch television shows like Supernatural for a sense of escapism by being able to indulge in the lives of characters. By watching Supernatural and any other drama program in general, the viewer has an opportunity to escape from the stress and problems that they have in their own life and think about something simple like television and television characters. Next is reception theory. So there are several responses that the audience can have to a piece of media. In reception theory, the producer of the media encodes it, and the audience has to decode the media. The way they decode the media will be based on their cultural biases and their personal experience. So their personal experiences will um will their personal experiences will change how they react to the media. So not one person won't react the same as another. So the first type of reaction is the dominant reaction. So this is the first of the three interpretations, and it's the one that the producer wants the viewer to have. The intended response is to enjoy the show. So enjoy Supernatural and get attached to the characters. Get into the show. So someone who had fairly liberal upbringings and who enjoys action would have a dominant response to Supernatural. I definitely had a dominant response to Supernatural because I was raised watching action and fantasy movies, and so I enjoy that type of show personally. Next is the negotiated response. So the negotiated response is sort of an in-the-middle response to a piece of media. And the negotiated response, the reaction is either positive or negative. A person who does not really find entertainment in action series would probably not enjoy, but would also not actively dislike the show. In the negotiated response, the reaction is neither negative or positive. Finally, the final reaction is the oppositional response to the media. Someone who is raised to follow the law or practice religion would probably have a negative response to Supernatural because it has a great deal of violence, anti-religious, and anti-police messages. People who could be considered very, very religious would have a very oppositional response to this show because of its portrayal of God and angels. They're portrayed in such a negative light. Next is postmodernism. So, Supernatural is a perfect example of a postmodern story. So, modernism is a search for a universal truth, while postmodernism is the opposite. Supernatural challenges many universal truths that people in society accept. First, it challenges the idea that monsters aren't real. Children growing up are taught not to be scared of the monster that lives under their bed because it isn't real. Werewolves, vampires, ghosts, demons, and other supernatural creatures are simply figments of the imagination. The world of Supernatural destroys this universal truth by taking every mythical creature that we were taught as children not to believe in and fighting them and killing them. Since the beginning of Supernatural, the brothers Sam and Dean have developed universal truths of their own. At the beginning of the series, Dean is very closed-minded when it comes to the supernatural. His belief is that if it is supernatural, it isn't human and it doesn't deserve to live. Many times throughout the seasons, his beliefs have been challenged by creatures. Even the brothers' seemingly black and white world of good and evil, human and inhuman, gray areas seem to appear. The universal truth of the supernatural being evil is constantly challenged as they meet creatures who don't fit the description of evil and even offer to help support the human agenda. So even there's universal truths challenged left and right. So in this way, Supernatural is very postmodern. It also has several postmodern aspects. First being hybridity. So Supernatural is the perfect example of hybridity. The show itself has monsters and creatures and spirits from every single era of history. It includes every monster that you could think of and puts it in a television show. The world that the show is set in has monsters and legends from every religion and culture living in the United States. It's the hybrid of every different culture and religion. Next is intertextuality. So it's also quite intertextual. It has aspects of several different branches of religion, including Christianity, Muslim, and paganism. The creatures that appear are legends that already exist in many other texts from these various religions. Several episodes also directly quote different fairy tales. For example, an episode of Supernatural directly followed the plot line of several different Brothers Grimm fairy tales, and another episode followed the exact plot line of the movie Groundhog Day. Finally is pastiche and parody. Several of the creatures that appear in Supernatural are parodies and different from what society's traditional views of them are. For example, the vampires and werewolves that appear in Supernatural are completely different than the traditional vampire that you would know from, say, watching Twilight, or watching or reading Dracula, watching Dracula. They're completely different. They're twisted. They're far more harsh than these vampires and werewolves that you would traditionally picture. Next, moving on to the discussion question. So, reception theory states that the audience's cultural background and bias will affect how they interpret the media that they are viewing. Based on your cultural biases, explain the reaction you had to this scene in Supernatural. Was it dominant, negotiated, or oppositional?
What's going on out there, David? It's not in me. Maybe he's telling the truth. Did they bleed on you? Who knows how far this thing can spread?
Oh, God. We're all gonna die.
Supernatural. All new next Thursday at 9/8 Central on the new CW.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for watching my presentation. I hope it was educational.